Today I'll talk about growth left on the table when the wrong CEOs run the right firms. So today, CEOs have a big impact on the firms that they run. That's established by research. Another fact is that nowadays, a large part of the economy, also in middle-income countries, are dominated by medium to large-size firms run by CEOs. But still, productivity of firms varies enormously between different countries. So with my co-authors, we recently asked ourselves, are firms in different countries at varying stages of development led by the right CEOs? And if not, how does mismatch between CEO and firm affect productivity? So there were several challenges to make progress on answering these questions. The first one was, how can we measure CEO types in a cost-effective way across many countries? Maybe you could also give me an answer to that. The way we thought about it was to develop a very simple survey to capture what the CEOs did during their working hours. And then we deployed that survey with 5,000 CEOs and their firms. We also took a lot of information on the firms in 42 mostly middle-income countries. What is a middle-income country? Just an example, Egypt. That's in our sample. And we focused on how CEOs spend their time. And then once we had the information on how the CEOs spend their working hours, we were able to divide CEOs into two types, leaders and managers. And that distinction is based on earlier research as well. So leaders are those who spend more time on high-level, multifunction meetings, often with, for instance, the C-suite, the board, or a parent company. On the other hand, managers are those that have more one-on-one meetings with, for instance, production and suppliers. So now that we have that data on the different CEOs, we needed a way to determine also whether CEOs are correctly matched to their firms. And if not, what productivity loss such mismatch would be associated with. So here we made an assumption, which is backed up by other research, that the CEOs and the firms in the richest countries are well matched. And based on that information, we also had another data set on some very rich countries. We predicted which type of CEO each firm needs based on what matching pattern in the richest countries, for instance, the US, the UK, and Germany. So it turns out that the firms that need the leader type, the one that I described first, are on average larger, more likely to be publicly listed, and work more in industries which are more R&D intensive, such as manufacturing of computing machinery. While firms that need manager type CEOs are on average relatively smaller, but still all firms in the sample have more than 50 employees. They're more likely to be family owned and not publicly listed, and they work more in industries which are less R&D intensive, such as textile manufacturing, food products manufacturing. So now that we have the data on what type of CEO every CEO in the sample is, and what type of CEO every firm needs, we can quantify how much mismatch there is. And we found a very large amount of mismatch in the middle-income countries. So what you see on the slide is also, you see the level of the mismatch, because on the y-axis there is the share of mismatched firm per country, and then against log GDP per capita. You also see kind of a pattern here, that there is more mismatch the lower the income a country has. So that's one finding. The second important finding is that for individual firms, such mismatch between CEO and firm type is associated with 16% lower productivity, as you can see from the gray bar, which is labor productivity. Interestingly, this is not only coming from the firms that need a leader, this more flashy type, C-suite meetings, but gets a manager, so that's the blue bar. They suffer in productivity. But it also comes from the other group, those that need a manager type, the less flashy type, but get a leader. They also suffer in productivity. So finally, over the whole sample, that is, if we average across all firms, not only those that are mismatched, but also those that are correctly matched, we find that mismatch is associated with at least 4% lower productivity. And this stems both from a too low leader supply, so too few leader type in the CEO pool in the middle-income countries, but also from mismatch, given the existing enough supply of leaders. And which firms are better matched and which firms are worse matched, you might ask yourself. So we found that matching is better for firms that are more internationally exposed, for instance, through foreign ownership or import and export relations. So a key takeaway for investors, which I think many of you here are, is pay attention to how the CEO spends his or her working hours and think about if this is adapted to the type of firm that they lead. Thank you.